Cowboys fans, Dallas Cowboys fans, we are now focused on the offseason. I guess you want to say full-fledged at this point, because now what you're obviously seeing going around the league as the NFL playoffs continue on, you're looking at matchups, the Baltimore Ravens versus the Kansas City Chiefs. That'll be a great game. It should be a great game to watch. And the Detroit Lions versus the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. So these should be a couple great games for the Cowboys. Cowboys fans, if you're a football fan just in general, I'm going to say I'm a football fan. So although it's very hard, obviously, for us to kind of maneuver our way through the emotions of how the season, we see the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows. And again, we kind of snatch some great positioning going into the postseason and do nothing with it. So of course this is going to be tough as Cowboys fans, but if you're a football fan, there's some great NFL matchups still on the board to take a look at. But going to the offseason for the Dallas Cowboys, let's talk about that a little bit. There's going to be a major turnaround, I'm going to say, in some of this roster movement and shakeup, because we have some guys on the I guess you want to say on the outs, guys that are going to be free agents, impending free agents, and also the Dallas Cowboys still have a little bit of ways to work around, because you do know contract extensions are very much so on the table for guys like CeeDee Lamb or Micah Parsons. These are two guys that you obviously want to be a part of your team and the core of your youth going forward. Obviously, Trayvon Diggs, were able to kind of get that done not too long ago. So you're going to actually be able to see the Dallas Cowboys hopefully hang on to some of these higher level players and then fit around where we can, because to me, the biggest issue the Dallas Cowboys had this year, we didn't have enough depth at the major, I guess you want to say the major points that this team needs. And to me, I'm going to say, obviously, linebacker play is going to be very important. So you're going to have to take a look into that and see some of the guys. You no longer, I'm going to say personally, in my opinion, I believe you're not going to have a Leighton Vander Esch. I feel like he's now at the point where he should really be thinking about his life after football, post-football career, and you want to take care of yourself, because these injuries, talking about neck injuries, spine, the back, things like that, they can kind of, again, be detrimental to your long-term health. So a guy like Leighton Vander Esch, that's not a guy I'm looking to see to possibly be in the mix. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back on a shorter deal, kind of kick the tires of the Cowboys, but I'm tired of us kind of doing these bargain deals, cheaper deals, looking for guys that we can kind of find that are injured because we can get them on a nice discount, I'm going to say. Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, they love doing this because, again, they always are trying to stay under the table as much as they can in negotiations. But at the end of the day, it's about stacking talent, building talent. Although whatever your whatever your beliefs are of Dak Prescott going forward as the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, it's going to be in the Cowboys' best bet. I'm going to say that their best, just on their best benefit, I'll say. Best benefit for the Dallas Cowboys to want to get an extension done with the Dak Prescott, because that's going to allow some money to be opened up for the Cowboys to be able to get be actual players in free agency this year. And of course, you obviously know you're still gonna have to pay your draft picks and everything, your draft pick signings and things like that. So you're going to want to open up as much available funding as you can. So this is going to be very interesting to see exactly how the Dak Prescott maneuvering is. I think it's already still in the works that the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott are looking to sign an extension, to agree on some type of extension going forward. The Dallas Cowboys did not help themselves when it comes to this Dak Prescott contract, because if you want to say one of the fans looking to get rid of a Dak Prescott or just move on because you feel he may have reached his ceiling, we're kind of strapped to him at this point, because what the Dallas Cowboys did, you didn't pay him a few years ago when you had the opportunity. So you end up waiting, and he bet on himself, and the Cowboys negotiated a contract that pretty much gives Dak Prescott so much leverage. I believe there's no trade clause, and also at the same point, we're looking at a $60 million cap hit if you're just trying to outright release him or move on from it. So Dak Prescott is going to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys going forward. So what is going, I guess, want to say in the best benefit for the Dallas Cowboys is to go into this offseason. That means the offseason, as in free agency. And yes, please, free agency. We're not talking about the bargain deals. If you're able to kind of kick the tires and find something that can actually help your team going forward, this is the time to now go all in, because Mike McCarthy returning for another year, and it's still up in the air if Dan Quinn comes back or returns if he's not able to get a job, a head coaching job going forward. But again, with Mike McCarthy coming back, you are now going to say this team is an all or nothing, boom or bust type situation, because Mike McCarthy, I believe I already said it, I believe Mike McCarthy, this is going to be the last year of his deal. He's now going to find himself in that mix of coaches where you say hot seat, it's more than a hot seat. The seat is completely burning at this point due to the game that the Dallas Cowboys put out there on the field against the Green Bay Packers in the last postseason game. Mike McCarthy is going to find himself in an all or nothing, if we're not at least reaching a Super Bowl, I'm going to say right now, I believe Mike McCarthy will no longer be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys going forward. He is now going to the 5th year and final year of his contract. So the Cowboys have got to take this free agency seriously, and that starts with paying attention to some of the guys that you do have on your own books that are going to free agency. Let's take a look at some of these guys. Again, the Dallas Cowboys do have some guys that are going to be leaving their books in free agency this upcoming offseason. So this is from Nick Harris of DallasCowboys.com. Again, Nick Harris of Cowboys.com laid this out perfectly. The guys that are going to be on possible free agents, and again, guys that I mean possible in the sense of the Cowboys, it's up in the air. Some of these, there are a few names maybe the Cowboys could look into bringing back at a certain deal, but I'm also at the I'm at the point of the Cowboys, my Cowboys fanhood, I'm gonna say, we're at the certain point where there have to be major changes, and I'm talking drastic changes. Some of these older guys that we've had on this team for like a long time, again, you can talk about a Tyron Smith. It's not really his fault. It's attrition. His body can break down certain points, but when he's playing healthily, I'm going to say healthily, he's still a very nice piece at the tackle position in the NFL. But at some point, you cannot consistently be, again, you're not just you're very uncertain, especially when it comes to offensive line. The number one thing about offensive line is cohesion and the guys being able to play off of one another. And that means being able to be available with one another. And Tyron Smith, he's always in and out of the lineup at this point. We love him as a future Hall of Famer. This is a guy that should go into the Ring of Honor one day for the Cowboys, but it's time, to me personally, in my opinion, for the Dallas Cowboys to move on from a Tyron Smith, kick the tires on something much younger, and see if we can just build and go from there. Nick Harris writes, Tyron Smith, 13 seasons with Dallas. The impending free agency of starting left tackle Tyron Smith will be one of the more interesting ones to follow as the offseason kicks into high gear. His stellar play on the field in 2023 was certainly a plus up front, but it's when he is off the field where the liability lies. Is Smith's health and availability, reliable enough to bring back? And if so, for how long and for how much? This will be questions that will have to be answered before making a further decision on the future Hall of Famer. Like I said, Tyron Smith at this point, we know he's very capable. We know he can still get the job done, but at this point, I'm ready to just look for something new. It's time to look into the future. Tony Pollard, 5 seasons with the Cowboys. I'm not going to read every single article because you guys can take it out. I'll link it below in the description box if you guys are interested in taking a look at that yourself. But Tony Pollard, 5 seasons with the Cowboys. We do know what Tony Pollard was, being the backup. I don't want to say backup, but that number 2 guy with the Ezekiel Elliott of last season, in 2022 season I'll talk about. And not having Zeke, you could tell it weighed a little bit on Tony Pollard. Although he was coming back from an injury, you were wanting to see a little bit more from him. I believe a career low 4.0 yards per carry as is written. Tony Pollard also rushed for 1,005 yards and 6 touchdowns. So this was not anything flashy. And we're talking about in 17 games, Tony Pollard ran for 1,005 yards, barely over the 1,000-yard mark. And it wasn't all his fault. This offensive line has been up and down, has been in limbo. But you're also looking to say Tony Pollard is not that feature back I believe that we thought he was. And that's not really even a knock, because at the end of the day, there are so many, I guess you want to say so few of these true power, I guess, not to say power, but just lead back guys. Your number one guy where he can take the full load. We're talking about in running game, in the rushing attempts, and also getting some catches, get involved in the passing game. Tony Pollard, he is a very capable, I guess you want to say, I'll say 1B. So if he has a running mate, a guy that can kind of take some of those, I guess you want to say more downfield, take some of that downfield punishment, then it's all good. But Tony Pollard, to me, at this point, I'm going to say there's also a guy I believe the Cowboys could potentially move on from, because again, you're also going to say this is always something that you can find in the NFL draft. I'll talk about the running back room is usually, and we're talking about sometimes you'll find guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th round that can end up being your team starter. We can go down a long list of the history in this league about some of these later round picks. So the Dallas Cowboys are not going to be, I guess you want to say, we're not going to be void of options when it comes to replacing what a Tony Pollard's production potentially in this running game. Obviously, Deuce Vaughn, a guy I thought could maybe find his role in this running game that obviously was not able to come to fruition. But maybe we'll see with a Deuce Vaughn. If he can be a little bit more of a gadget player going into year 2, we'll see. But the Dallas Cowboys, to me personally, we should probably move on from a Tony Pollard. There's not anything I'm willing to say to franchise tag another guy that we can probably find some production similar to what he can give us, and sometimes maybe a little bit better in this upcoming draft. Stephon Gilmore, a guy that we traded for, and he was going to pay major dividends because he was going to be that second piece next to a Trayvon Diggs. And you know, with DaRon Bland going into year 2, he's going to be your main nickel corner. This is a guy that now, when you're looking at a DaRon Bland, obviously Trayvon Diggs going down in week 3 with the unfortunate ACL injury, you're forced to see a DaRon Bland play a little bit more on the outside. And I just want to say, take it to the tune of 9 interceptions, leading the entire NFL, being all-pro, first-team all-pro cornerback for DaRon Bland this season, and also breaking the NFL pick-6 record in one season with 5 this past season. So DaRon Bland, to me, that's going to be your outside guy for the future. That's a guy, of course, he has his flaws in his game still, but he has a way to work, because now, again, you're talking about DaRon Bland having an all-pro corner and a former all-pro corner in Trayvon Diggs himself returning. Hopefully we can get him back as healthy as possible. Next season, you're looking at 2 first-team all-pros on one side of the ball. These guys are both pick artists, and now it's going to be your job to figure out who you're going to move around in this nickel slot corner. But to me, Stephon Gilmore, we appreciate what he did, what he brought to this team. It was some veteran leadership, and I would have loved to see him be able to be out there and not have to be relied on as that number 1 main guy when he has to kind of buckle down. If guys are, I guess you want to say, teams are starting to aim their I guess you want to say their plays and the game plan towards a guy taking some chances on DaRon Bland. Stephon Gilmore, we saw him have to step up a little bit more than, again, maybe just out of his role of what he probably believed he was going to be for us as well. So Trayvon Diggs, like I said, and DaRon Bland, to me, those are my personal favorites that we're going towards for the future as our boundary corner. And also looking to a guy like Jordan Lewis, who's coming up next. And you're going to say Jordan Lewis been 7 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. The same questions about Gilmore could be asked about Jordan Lewis. Nick Harris writes, who is also looking at potentially being the odd man out in a loaded cornerback room in 2024. As a slot nickel, Lewis could be brought back with Diggs and Bland on the boundaries, but it's tough to imagine both Gilmore and Lewis on the team next season. And I believe Jordan Lewis should be a part of this team. This is a guy you could probably get back maybe on a 3-year deal, something like that, around that, of those sorts, if you're able to. I'm sure you're going to talk to your agents, and you're going to see guys like Jordan Lewis, maybe see what their interest is around the league, what they can get paid. But I feel like Jordan Lewis is a guy the Cowboys should look to bring back, because he showed that he is very capable. He made some plays, especially in the second half of this past season on the defensive side of the ball. Jordan Lewis, once he got his legs back and he's healthy, Jordan Lewis is a very capable and a guy that can get the job done at that nickel corner. And also, like I said, having a Trayvon Diggs, who we're going to hope is come back fully healthy, and a DaRon Bland, who took major leaps in year 2, now being a boundary corner, showing the ability to play a boundary corner. A guy like Jordan Lewis, again, been in the league about 7 years, especially with the Dallas Cowboys up to this point. This is a guy I'm going to say I feel very comfortable with getting him back on a nice deal. Dorrance Armstrong, 6 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, the second leading sack getter. This is, to me, a guy I'm going to say, I believe this year, he had 7.5 sacks. Nick Harris writes, and also 38 tackles. But you're looking at a guy like Dorrance Armstrong. I am not really big on just bringing back, because again, let's be clear, you can never have too many pass rushers. You can't have too many guys that can get out to the quarterback. But I want the Cowboys to stop looking for these tweener guys, these guys that are just more simply just a pass rusher. And because again, we saw some of the major issues for the Cowboys is the run defense. We obviously know DeMarcus Lawrence is very capable. Micah Parsons at certain points can be very good at being a run stopper on the edges. But you're going to, me personally, in my opinion, I want to get more guys that are dual threats when it comes to both of these. I will sacrifice a few sacks if it comes to guys that are just more all-around players. And to me, we're going to look around and say Dorrance Armstrong could potentially find himself in having a nice deal elsewhere this team. Because again, you can't have too many pass rushers, and there are going to be other teams that could potentially be looking to give a guy like that a nice little contract, and I'm going to say a contract far bigger than what I think the Cowboys should be willing to give him. Jaron Kearse, 3 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, up and down. Of course, we know Jaron Kearse this year was probably the worst year I can say he had, and more so because you saw him be used a little bit out of his role and what his normal role and normal duties are. You're looking at him, sometimes we saw him, especially towards his latter part of the season, and in this playoff game against the Packers, you see Jaron Kearse being caught out in coverage a little bit. That has not been what he's been doing for the most part. Outside of guarding your tight ends and being a guy that we were calling a tight end whisperer for a couple of seasons around here, Jaron Kearse, now we're at the point where you're looking at replacements. You're going to ask, is a guy like Marquise Bell could potentially be moved back to a role like that and not trying to be this hybrid linebacker? And we saw get him in a little bit of trouble this year. You still have a Donovan Wilson that you just gave a 3-year extension to, I believe, last offseason. So Donovan Wilson, Marquise Bell, I feel like these are guys you could possibly see being able to be used and maybe a cheaper, I guess you want to say at a cheaper price. But also at the same time, if you're going to look back, and Jaron Kearse, he does have, again, he's one of those guys that is a vocal leader. Even if the play did not completely, fully match this season, Jaron Kearse is very much so a vocal leader on this team. So that could also pay, I guess you want to say, be very important to this locker room. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Jaron Kearse returning as well. Dante Fowler, 2 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. This is more of another gadget guy. I believe he had 4 sacks this year. This is a guy I'm not interested in the Cowboys bringing back. And Dante Fowler has been good in certain stretches. We saw him make some splash plays here and there. But again, these are more so of the guys. I'm just looking for the Cowboys to bring in dual quality guys on both sides of the ball. But especially when we're talking about more so, I'm talking about, especially we're talking about on the O-lines, your edge rushers, guys like that. Those are guys I'm looking to see be used a little bit more now, because we can talk about our offensive line on the other side of the ball. Like I said, on both sides, I want to see us be more physical when it comes to the run game. But also, I don't want to see us sacrifice too much in our pass blocking. But going back to the defensive side, that's why I said Dante Fowler is more of those, one of those kind of gadget players. You have him here and there. He has a solid role. You know what his role is. He's in there on passing downs, and that's what it is. And now, you can't have too many of those guys, because at the end of the day, the league is also about situational ball. So these third down plays, when you need one of these guys, Dante Fowler can also have a role. So I am not going to say I'm completely out on a Dante Fowler returning on a very cheap deal. When I say cheap deal, I mean a very cheap deal. But at the same time, I'm also cool with the Dallas Cowboys if they potentially just choose to go in a younger direction. Again, the draft and offseason, the fully draft and free agency are going to be full and well on the table for the Dallas Cowboys. So there should be no tire that's left unkicked and figure out exactly how we can fix this thing, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Noah Igbignogany, a guy I think in the Kelvin Joseph trade from the Miami Dolphins, didn't really do too much. You saw a nice play for him, a special teams touchdown from him, I believe, in the first game against the New York Giants this season, and then that was pretty much it for him. He's gotten in and out of special teams, kind of here and there. You saw him get in a little bit again when these games turn into big blowouts, and you're trying to give some guys some spells on the defensive side of the ball. That's what you saw in Noah Igbignogany. But again, this is a guy I doubt is going to be back at all. Jonathan Hankins. 2 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. We already know Jonathan Hankins is pretty much our best run stopper in the interior, on the interior of that D-line. And obviously, we expected a little bit more out of a guy like Mozzie Smith, rookie out of Michigan, our first-round pick out of Michigan. But he was not able to, I guess you want to say, upgrade and develop to the point that maybe some people were hoping to, and it could have been wishful thinking, because again, he is still a rookie, and this game comes to different players as different I guess you want to say different stages. Sometimes it takes guys a couple years. Sometimes you see some guys come in year one and they're able to make some splash plays. But a guy like Jonathan Hankins, he is very important to this team. I would love to have a Jonathan Hankins back, if not even more so just for his mentorship and what he can bring to some of these younger guys. But I think the Cowboys, Jonathan Hankins going into next year should not be your predominant and main best interior lineman, because if he still is, the Dallas Cowboys are not going to be reaching any goals that they want to reach, because Jonathan Hankins, he is starting to get a little long in the tooth, and again, he is a veteran, so you can't have too many of those as well. But you have to bring back Jonathan Hankins and have another guy that's going to be pretty much either splitting time or taking time from him, because I'm going to say Mozzie Smith, this is his time to now step up. We already know, we could talk about some of these bad choices the Dallas Cowboys are taking with some of these higher level picks. We're talking about first round picks, second round picks a lot of times. But Mozzie Smith, I'm not giving up on that kid. But if we can get a Jonathan Hankins to somehow work his way back in on a discounted contract, something that we can kind of work our way around, and where he's able to kind of continue some mentorship for Jonathan Hankins, I'm all for it as well. Trent Siege, 1 season with the Dallas Cowboys. We're talking about, of course, obviously, you do know your long snappers are very important. Chuma Edoga, a guy I do not want to bring back to this team. I don't see the need. Chuma Edoga had so many times. We can go to the Dolphins game more specifically. There were just so many confusing moments for a guy like that it sometimes it just looks like Chuma Edoga gets lost out there, and we have too many of those. I'm okay with us giving opportunities to some guys like Austin Richards going into year 2. We're going to see exactly if we're going to keep him at a guard position, move him around at tackle. These are some guys I'm willing to give more of an opportunity instead of bringing him back a Chuma Edoga. So let him go, in my personal opinion. Neville Gallimore, 4 seasons with the Cowboys. this is going to be, I feel like, the last year of a Neville Gallimore, because you are still going to see that you have a Mozzie Smith. You also have Osa Odigizua still in the mix. And the Cowboys are never going to be void of somebody or bodies at the end of the day. And Neville Gallimore coming out of OU, we felt he had certain points, and he had some, I guess you want to say, some splash point plays at certain points of his tenure with the Cowboys in these first 3-4 years. But this is going, I'm going to say he's probably not going to be back, because unless the Cowboys are just looking for more of these bargain deals. At the end of the day, we are not going to be confused if Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones choose to take that route. But Neville Gallimore, a guy I feel like probably has seen his last day as well. Rico Dowdle, this is a guy I felt as the season went on, the Cowboys themselves did not give him as many opportunities as he probably should have gotten. And I'm not saying Rico Dowdle is Ezekiel Elliott's replacement or a guy like that, but Rico Dowdle has a nice solid flow to his game. He is a downfield runner, and once he gets rolling, you can tell he's kind of I'm gonna say a bit of a momentum type running back, and we see it all the time. But this is going to, I'm gonna say Rico Dowdle is now probably gonna find himself maybe in the mix of being able to return. It depends on how much the Cowboys value a guy like Malik Davis, because at the end of the day, like I said, this could potentially be a draft where you see the Cowboys take a running back or two. So I wouldn't be surprised. So if Rico Dowdle was not returning back to the team, that would not surprise me at all as well. Tyler Biadasz, 4 seasons with the Cowboys, the starting center for the Dallas Cowboys next season, written by Nick Harris, could be a whole betting game, as Tyler Biadasz's contract runs up on March 13th. An intriguing center options sit ahead in the draft. Additionally, a small handful of free agent names could be available as well. But when you look at what Biadasz contributed on paper, he was a Pro Bowler in 2022 and has started in all but 2 games in the last 3 seasons. Tyler Biadasz has, I'm going to say, he's improved to the point where he's a respectable NFL player. Like he said, he was a Pro Bowler. You could say replacement in 2022, but he has been a solid piece in that, I guess you want to say, on that O-line. But I feel like Tyler Biadasz, he also has his inconsistent moments, and at certain points you can't do that when you're that center of that O-line, because everyone needs you sometimes to be the one to getting everybody else in line. So Tyler Biadasz, he can continue to improve. This is a guy I'm not against, unless the Cowboys completely just go into the draft, somehow find a center or somebody they can I guess you want to say, pull some full confidence in. I believe Tyler Biadasz will probably be returning back to the Cowboys, but we will see. Sean McEwen, this may be his last season. I'm pretty much sure I can say by 98%. Sean McEwen will not be returning to this team. Of course, he's a better blocker than I'm going to say a Peyton Hendershot is, but this is a guy that when you're going to be looking in the mix and seeing what Jake Ferguson developed into in this year, and you're also going to see the Cowboys obviously use a 2nd-round pick, whether you hated it, and more people hated it than loved it. Whether you hated the draft pick, 2nd-round pick from Michigan, Luke Schoonmaker, tight end, and then you're also, me personally, a guy I felt was going to be a splash player for this team and could potentially have just been that 1-2 punch in the tight end position, playing opposite of a guy like Jake Ferguson, and this is John Stevens Jr. This is a guy, unfortunately, tears his ACL, I believe, in the same game that DeMarvion Overshown, another guy I felt was going to be paying major dividends for this defense and this team in general this past season. But John Stevens Jr., that's a guy I'm going to say is probably going to find himself in the mix. That kid is too talented and he has too much potential. And if he's able to come back healthy and get his body where it needs to be, Sean McEwen, I'm sure he will be out of the way, because again, now you're looking to see who are some of the tight end room is going to pretty much be full at this point. You're looking at a Jake Ferguson, a Luke Schoonmaker, who's going to be going into year 2, John Stevens Jr., and then possibly a Peyton Hendershot. We'll see. Peyton Hendershot is usually going to be that guy. He's going to be gadgety here and there. You'll use him on special teams a lot. So I feel like his spot is going to be completely solidified. But at the end of the day, Cowboys, these are not, you're starting to get to the bottom of your I guess your free agent worries, and now CJ Goodwin, been a nice special teams player for the Dallas Cowboys. This is a guy you could potentially see back, but he is 34 years old. Do not hold your horses on that, because I feel like this is probably going to be more, again, just of a youth development. But at the same time, I guess you want to say, continue to go to the fact that Mike McCarthy is last year of his deal. These are some of the points where he's now going to probably lean on some of these guys that he fully can count on, he believes he can trust in. And that's where Cowboys free agency is going to get a little bit shaky and get a little bit tricky. So we'll talk about it a little bit as it comes, and as I guess you want to say, as the free agency and as the NFL draft gets a little closer, some of these decisions will become a little bit clearer. So what's next for the Dallas Cowboys? I said, and I'll say it again, linebackers. Interior. These are the number one things the Dallas Cowboys need to focus on. And obviously we can work on anything to help our running game. But if the Cowboys are going to be a more solidified team, a more consistent team, it's going to have to be improving that front seven. We saw too many times, and I don't want to even continue to go into others. I'm not going into other teams' postseason games, but it was just when you're watching some of these games and you're watching sometimes when a team just cannot run the ball, you can make them one-dimensional. The Dallas Cowboys have got to take that more seriously, especially if a guy like Dan Quinn comes back. That's why I'm very nervous about seeing that, because we saw many times Dan Quinn, this was the worst year, I'm going to say, for him. Obviously, he had many things to have to overcome. We're talking about injuries. We're talking about losing key guys that you expected to potentially have there in some of these key spots. But what we saw Dan Quinn get away from a lot is just we're talking about just not trusting run gaps, not executing run gaps, because he doesn't teach his guys, again, that same discipline when it comes to that, because this is pretty much a stunt heavy defense, a stunt heavy approach. And when you do that, you're always going to find yourself not being able to play when it comes to these more physical offensive lines. And the Cowboys, if we're going to get serious, we're going to have to adopt more of a downfield approach, being hard-nosed, being physical, and that comes to me with getting bigger, faster, and stronger at the linebacker position. Damone Clark is a guy, I feel like he still has some potential. I feel like he can grow. He's still going, I believe this is now year 2. So he has some more weight and muscle to put on himself. He has some more to just learn about the game itself, and then he could just play more off instinct instead of pretty much sitting here. Sometimes you see Damone Clark out there, it's not as if he's thinking, but you can tell he's a little bit hesitant at certain times, and that's the difference between stopping a run for 1 or 2 yards or them getting 7-8 yards down the field and maybe more if they're able to break some tackles. And we saw that too many times this season. I'm going to say the Cowboys need to get better in the trenches, get better, get stronger, get more physical. And that'll also help on the flip side. We're talking on the offensive line. We have got to get more physical. Hopefully Terrence Steele is going to have a bounce back year, because he's already got his extension. I believe the Cowboys can't get out of that thing until after next season. So we're going to have to just get stronger, get better with some of the pieces that we do have. But there are some guys that could potentially be finding themselves out the door. Again, talk about a Tyron Smith, and the Cowboys are going to have to look and ask themselves, how can we improve, and who do we need to just let go? Because sometimes at the end of the day, the hardest part you can do as a front office is seeing, because they're building this family environment they're calling for themselves. And the last thing we've seen Jerry Jones do too many times, we hang on to players sometimes way longer than we should, and I don't want to see us do that anymore, because we do see at some point it starts to catch up and starts to weigh on you. So the Cowboys, they have some decisions to make going into free agency. They have some decisions to make going into I'm going to say into the NFL draft in April. So lock in as a fan base. Stay tuned. Keep yourselves ready. Stay out of the negativity. We do know the Cowboys have always had. So we always going to be in the news. We're always going to be talked about on TV. You're always going to have some of these things going around. You saw the Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb saga in quotations. We're talking about Dak Prescott. Obviously, he didn't have the best game possible. CeeDee Lamb's mother is talking about it on Facebook, and it's going around. You're seeing that spreading out. And of course, national media is going to start to ask questions. Do Dak and CeeDee have a problem? Are the Cowboys in disarray right now? This team is exactly where they're going to be. I'm not going to, obviously, a very disappointing season, the very disappointing end of the season, and the way that the postseason just did not go the way that we had expected and hoped that it would. But the Cowboys, we do still have a few nice pieces to use going forward and to just build on it, to form, I guess, an actual stronger core. And hopefully we're able to get some of those things done. But like I said, this fan base, stay together, stay locked in, because we do know there's always going to be noise, and we can't let it get too loud, because at the end of the day, the Dallas Cowboys have just got to put out a better product on the field, and we can quiet down some of that noise. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share, and continue to keep liking. Like I said, I want you guys to comment way more. I want you guys to keep throwing your opinions out there, because I like to read them, and I like to give my opinions on you guys' thoughts themselves. So I appreciate you guys for all the support, like I said, and once again, you guys enjoy the rest of your day.